Thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is going to give you an introduction into our Datrgy data management platform. And I'm going to walk through with you a brief introduction into Nephos as a business, who we are, what it is we do. What we see is kind of today's data challenge, what it is that Datrgy is, what it does, how it works, and then I'm going to take you through the platform itself with a brief demo. Now, as a business, when we founded in 2011, we came to market really to be kind of a modern day independent partner for our customers. Now, what we saw was that actually our customers at the time in previous life, they weren't really having their thinking challenged by their incumbent partners at all. It was all about kind of more of the same, churning what they have today. And customers just weren't getting the value that they needed from their partners anymore. It's all become very sort of stable. And what we saw was an opening for an independent partner for those customers that's really focused in on the data and that's able to sort of leverage emerging modern tech, particularly when we consider how we store, protect, process their data. And that's really the challenge that we came to market to overcome and the dynamic that we wanted to change. Now, as we've done that, our big focus as an organisation is all around the data. So whether you're using public, private, hybrid cloud, it doesn't really matter to us. What we focus in on is the challenges that you have around data. You know, how do you store it more efficiently? How do you create a globally accessible data store? How do we support analytics, machine learning, all of those sorts of good things? It's all of that comes back to the data, regardless of the technology overlay. All of that is related to the data, and that's where we focus. We do that independently. So when we began, we had a very clear idea that we didn't want to populate a data center full of our own equipment, build our own cloud infrastructure. You know, ultimately, what our customers wanted was choice. They want flexibility. And if us as a business had a vested interest in that environment, then actually we remove that choice just by nature for our customers. So it's key that we're independent. And we partner with some of the leading providers in their spaces, multiple leading providers in their spaces to deliver solutions to our customers. And the combination of those things and our expertise has really led us to become very proven. So consistently, we run a customer retention rate of 95+%. We very rarely lose customers. And the reason for that is that we consistently bring value to them. We continue to develop, we continue to look for new emerging technologies that are really going to fit some of the needs of our customers. And that's really important for us as a business. And that's kind of led us to work with some of the largest companies in the world. I mean, across vertical, whether you're financial services, engineering, construction, media, financial services. We have a very broad spread of customer base, but the one thing that kind of unites all of them is the challenges that they have around data. That's the thing that binds them all. And quite commonly, the question that we're asked is, how do we store our data better? How do we become more efficient? How do we protect that data in a more efficient way? We want to distribute that content. We want to create a global environment. We want to bring in different data sources for analytics workloads. You know, all of these things, it all centers back to data. And that's really, I guess, where we kind of differentiate, hopefully, from some of the other organisations that you might work with day to day. And you know, that more effectively could be cost. It could be performance. It might be capability. It means different things to different people. And that the independent approach, again, for us is key to making sure that that we're able to deliver that for our customers. From a technology standpoint, we talk a lot about what we term as next generation infrastructure. It means a lot of different things for different people, right? But ultimately, when we take on new technologies, we look for three criteria. The first thing that we look for is for that infrastructure to be software defined. We don't believe that actually the days of sort of big iron purchases and being physically restricted to a specific vendor's proprietary PIN is the way to go. We believe that the platforms that are being launched into the market these days are a lot more open and significantly more software driven. So we look for software defined tech. We look for those technologies to be cloud integrated. Now, whether you use public cloud services today, AWS, Azure, Google, whoever it might be, or not, it's not for us. What we're looking for are technology sets that enable you to do that in the future. What time after time our customers say to us is that they don't want to cut off the option for the future. They don't want to invest in something today that doesn't give them a pathway to using public cloud infrastructure and typically multi-cloud infrastructures. And the last piece, which is a big key component, is all around this API architecture. I think it's pretty commonplace that most organizations, most IT organizations are being asked to deliver more for less. Very rarely do people have the same headcount, the same budget, growth that is matched by the business growth. You typically have to deliver the same amount of infrastructure, the same amount of capability, if not more, for the same or less budget. So for us, the only way you can really do that is through orchestration and automation. But you need an API-based architecture to do that. You need infrastructure that is capable of being automated in the first place. Linked in with the cloud integrated piece as well, really. It's a case of not shutting yourself off and not removing the capability to do it in the future as well. A lot of what we do with customers and a lot of initial engagements is all service driven. We've developed a number of what we call smart services, which are all kind of focus around strategy development, understanding of your environment, business case building, all of those sorts of capabilities to help guide our customers through from where they are today to where they want to get to their end state. Wherever that end state is on their maturity level. We call them our smart services, and we've really packaged those up to make sure that they're repeatable, that they remove risk, and that we can deliver consistently with them. And that's really the goal of those environments. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about those in a little while. So with that all in mind, with that context in mind, with that data focus in mind, what's Datrgy? Why have we built a product? Well, it's all about the data. What we see consistently is this exponential growth, primarily in unstructured data. File data, whether it's archive, whether it's primary file system, whether it's long-term retention for backup, whatever it might be, that growth rate is going through the roof and will continue to do so. But traditional storage models are hugely inefficient, actually, when you think about it. Most customers that we walk into are storing at least 5 times more data than they actually require on a daily basis. And that's 90% of that is based on the fact that traditional architectures are built on RAID and replication. The second piece of that puzzle is the fact that a lot of organizations are moving into a more collaborative mode. But traditionally doing that, it's been pretty tough. We end up with a lot of duplicated data across different silos and pockets of storage across a global organization. The bulk of that data is unstructured, and actually it's becoming the crown jewels. I mean, this is no surprise to anyone. The more that we use BI tools, the more that we leverage analytics, we drive more and more value from our data. But if we're going to drive that value, ultimately it becomes more valuable, therefore needs to be protected, and more durable, the more value it has. So for us, what we're looking to do is kind of take a model with our customers that simplifies that. And a big piece of that work leverages object and cloud storage or cloud storage. So whether that's on-premise object or in-cloud storage like Amazon's S3 platform or Azure Blob, as a bedrock for storing that unstructured data. And then we leverage ecosystems of partners over the top of that, of ISV partners over the top of that, to deliver against multiple different use cases. To do that, however, a lot of what we do is engaging with customers to understand what the data looks like in the first place. For a number of our customers, it's very clear they know how much data they've got, they know where it is, don't necessarily know what the profile of it is, i.e., how frequently do we access it once it's created? Do we modify a lot of data? Do we use it a lot for reference purposes, for example? So a lot of what we do is around, one, understanding the data sets themselves, and two, off the back of that, once we understand the data, irrelevant of the platform we're using, of the technology we're using to deliver a solution, we need to understand the data first before we can build a coherent strategy around what to do with it. Two of our service offerings, Smart File Assessment, Smart Object, rely on that model. Now, historically, we've used a number of off-the-shelf tool sets to go and perform an initial data capture with our clients. And what we discovered as we went through that process was that traditional tool sets aren't built for a distributed environment or the growth in data that's really come about. And in that, they're very sort of clunky, hard to work, requires multiple installations, or complex tagging, plus a lot of sort of quite high-end infrastructure to support it. We found that as a service provider. So when we were speaking to some of our customers, what we understood was that actually they have this very same challenge. You know, they want visibility into their data today for this specific project, but actually they want it ongoing and they want to be able to manage that data ongoing. And it's for that reason and to plug that gap that we've built Datrgy. Now, Datrgy, quite simply, is a central platform for data management. It's designed to simplify visibility over your distributed file storage. In simple terms, that's what Datrgy is and what we've built. The whole goal of that was to make things better, right? We wanted to develop something that was easy to use, that was low cost, that, true to our model, utilizes modern technology sets to improve and enhance, I guess, a traditional concept. We wanted a platform that gives a centralized viewpoint of your data, regardless of whether it's in a single data center or across multiple locations, multiple file systems, whether it's geographically diverse, whether it's in one region. We wanted to give one view of that. We wanted it to be lightweight, i.e. not big chunks of infrastructure needed to support the platform, and therefore affordable. And we wanted it to be able to work quickly. So that's in terms of both deployment. So we want the simple deployment model. We want you up and running quickly. But we also want to be able to consistently gain that picture of our data quickly, and constantly. You know, we need that view, and that's what we believe we've designed in our Datrgy tool. Now, the deployment of it is very simple. Just to give you a quick architectural concept, the core piece is the Datrgy dashboard itself. That's a centralized dashboard, which I'll show you shortly. You can either deploy it on-premise. It is effectively a virtual machine running on Elastic. So we can also deploy that in cloud in AWS. And then further down the track, we're looking at being able to deliver this as a multi-tenanted SaaS model. That's not there today, but it is something on the roadmap for us. That dashboard is what gives us the core view of your data. That's your reporting center. It's where you drive your visibility from, and that's our core. But that doesn't connect directly to file systems, particularly in a distributed environment. So what we've designed is effectively a very lightweight sensor that we can deploy as a virtual machine using ESXi or ESX from VMware as a virtual machine hypervisor. And those sensors connect to the file systems. So we effectively mount a file, and that sensor is responsible for scanning data. Now, we only scan metadata. We do not open your data. We do not open files. We do not MD5 hash. We do not do any of that. What we are currently doing is running scans against the metadata for profiling purposes. And you'll see that shortly. Now, because of that approach, we're able to perform those tasks extremely quickly. So within testing, and we've been using this for the last 7-8 months or so ourselves now, is we've been able to see that we can scan roughly, assuming that we've got enough performance, circa 1 million files in 15 minutes, which is pretty rapid. Those sensors then push that report data effectively back to the dashboard. So really straightforward model, not a lot to think about from your side, from an infrastructure perspective, just a very easy, lightweight way to get the system deployed. Now, with that in mind, what I'm going to do now is just show you the system itself. Now, this is a lab environment, so there's not a huge amount of data in here. We use it to demonstrate the concept more than anything else, and that's what I'm looking to do for you now. So once we log in to the system, you're presented with a sort of high-level dashboard view, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute. But before I do that, I'm going to just walk you through kind of setup theory and how that works. So we have a concept of groups and sites. What this effectively means is that we can group maybe by region, by opco, by whatever it may be, a number of sites within that group. Now, we've built that in because by nature of the fact that a lot of these file systems are distributed, it makes sense that companies may want an ability to drill down into specific regionalized data sets, and that's what we're doing here. Within those groups, we have a concept of sites, which again, we have a number of sites that will run, and they might be, a location. It might be for a specific storage pool, whatever it may be. But we have this concept of sites too. And within a site, we can run multiple sensors. And you'll see a consumer key. That consumer key is responsible for binding the sensor to the site. I guess in traditional database terms, it's like a primary key, effectively. Once we've done that, we're able to deploy sensors. We can deploy those to a number of, as I say, multiple sensors per site. Not a problem at all. A very basic concept. Once those sensors are up and running, they connect back to the Datrgy portal, and then you see them here. This part of the tool is really just for a quick check. So you'll notice here a green ball, which shows that this particular sensor is up online and working. We have a number of grey balls, as I said, because this is a lab environment. These are sensors that aren't actually switched on right now, but they are connected to the core. So if we were to switch on HT1, for example, we then see this line up over here. Once we've got the sensors deployed, we attach file servers to them. Its naming convention here is file servers. It doesn't matter whether that's a Windows file server, a NAS device, an edge cache, or a cloud storage gateway. It's just a naming convention. What we care about is whether we're using CIFS or Nephos. That's what we care about. So quite a simple process to create a file server. We select our site, we give it a file server name, an IP address, and a share type, and we connect that in on the sensor. What we require to scan are effectively the right level of access privileges for the file system to be able to scan at a high level. It's our only prerequisite for the scanning piece. Once our file servers are connected, we have an option. We can run a one-time scan, which is as it would suggest. So this is what we use for audit work, the one-time scan. It's also what we see more and more customers looking at using for things like M&A work. So if they're bringing on a new part of the business and they want to bring that into a shared storage environment, and they want to understand what that footprint looks like, how much of that data can we remove, if any of it? They want that sort of depth of information before they start migrating in old data, legacy data into a new environment. We'll see a status there. We can schedule those scans. So as you can imagine, not everyone wants to run these in standard business hours. So once we select a sensor, we select where we want to scan, how we want to scan. We can either run that immediately, or we can schedule that on a selected time. So the purpose behind that is really to give you some flexibility over when those scans run. The scans themselves don't open any of the data, the file data, or files themselves. So actually it's a very lightweight process and very non-intrusive. But for some customers, they want that sort of, level of extra comfort that nothing untoward is going to happen with their file services while they're running the scans. Now we can run that as a one-time scan. We can do the same thing as a recurring scan. So we want to run the same scan, same profile, 6 o'clock every evening, for example, once a month, whatever that may be. But that's just based on a straightforward calendar function, alongside the ability to also put in select an end date for that. So you might only want to do that for the next 6 months, for example. Once we run those scans, we might want to do something with them, with the data. So I'll come back to the dashboard shortly. We have the concept of migrations. Effectively, what the migration is doing is a file system to file system copy and delete of the data. Typically, this is used for one of two purposes: either initial ingest or migration of data from legacy file system, legacy storage to new, or for sort of more consistent archive type capability. So, for example, one of our media customers are looking at running scans and migrations on a daily basis for completed work that they can move from primary file system into an archive file system on lower cost, bigger scale storage. We can set those policies based on a number of things. So, for example, here I want to find every file that was created 30 days plus ago. I want to select a migration date at time, the sensor that I want to use to run that, source file server, and share. So, if, for example, if I select a sensor, I can select file server, and this will ask me whether I want to scan specific shares or the whole file system, for example. Likewise, I then select my destination file server and share for the target location to run that copy to. I hit migrate again. I can schedule it as and when I see fit. So a really easy way to get some consistent archiving capability of your data once you've gained visibility. Currently, that's file system to file system. What we have coming in our next release is the ability to run that migration into an AWS S3 bucket natively. Further beyond that, we're also working on Azure integration for Azure Blob Storage. The latter takes a little bit longer because of the API capability that Microsoft had. We have this concept of tasks. Real straightforward idea here. All I want to know is if I've run a task, I want to know when that's happened, whether it's happened completely, whether it's completed. Report, which I'll show you shortly. I want to consolidate a view that I can go back to and download those reports from, for example. We also have a standard monthly report, which is distributed generated at a single point in time per month. And as you can see here, the report will be generated at the end of every month. You can download that report. You can email it on to someone else. We are also looking at creating the ability to run scheduled reports and scheduled distribution of those reports. So, if you at the start of every month want to run a report and automatically send it to lines of business, for example, you can do. So that's coming into it in the future. Now I'm going to move back to the dashboard briefly and just walk you through this. Now once we've done those scans, once we've run the environment, what you'll see here is a top level view. So how many sites have we scanned, how much data have we scanned, how many files and how many shares. Right here, we're seeing a consolidated view of what all of the data, kind of the roll-up of all of the data from all of those 6 sites. So how much of that data is live? And for the purposes of our lab, live is anything that's less than 6 months old. Anything that we would term as active archive, i.e. it's not live file system stuff that's being worked on, but it does still need to be available. It is still being accessed, just less frequently. And typically what we do is run an initial scan to build these profiles out. So we know that actually, based on what we see from your data, most of your files are generated month 1. They're accessed consistently for the first 3 months, then sporadically month 3 to 6, very, very rarely 6 to 12 months, and never 12 months plus. And that might be how this filters down into active archive, archive cold. And that's to give us a view on kind of the makeup of the storage that you're running and how optimized that is. So a lot of the purpose behind this concept is that actually we don't want to hold archive data on performant file storage. From a cost perspective, it's not the right place to hold that data. So if we can get visibility into that, we can start managing it, managing our data more efficiently. We show some standard breakdown, file size breakdowns, file creation, access, modified dates, to give you some breakdown there. Top 10 file types, quite an interesting thing to look at. It varies heavily between industries. So, if we walk into a financial services organization and we see a lot of MP4, it might be something that we need to consider. It might be something that we need to consider is maybe not the data that we want to be seeing. Alternatively, we see a lot of media customers where that's absolutely the sort of data that we'd expect. So it's just just a bit of an indicator, really, in terms of whether you're consuming storage for content that's maybe undesirable. We have a concept of duplicates. Now, because we don't open any of your files, because we don't use any sort of MD5 hash, what we identify are duplicate candidates. Now, these candidates are basically matched files on file name, extension, size, to give us visibility into some potential duplicate data. If you look in this example, we believe there's just a little over 5.5% of the data that we're storing is duplicated. One of the highest ones we've seen so far is circa 30%. Now, if you translate that to the fact that actually 30% of your data is duplicated, which means you're wasting 30% of your storage and you're paying for storage that really you don't need, or that you've invested in and are wasting. It's a very valuable data point for our customers. And the last piece is all around growth percentage. Now, this is a lab environment, so the data's not been in there long enough to show a yearly change, but we will show a monthly in this particular example. And this is really to give us some projected growth. So it's kind of like a very high-level capacity planning view. All of the data that we store here, everything that we have is exportable in CSV format, so you can export it and manipulate that as you see fit. We're also looking at being able to export that into something like Power BI or Tableau via the API. So again, that's roadmap for us. It's not there day one, but it will come. We absolutely see the value in being able to do that. So all of that content is exportable for you. The last piece that I would mention is here on the primary dashboard. This is the roll-up number. What we can do is then filter that down by group or by site. So if you want to drill into a specific site or a specific group of sites that maybe you want to just check out, or maybe it's some new locations that you've brought on board, you just want to make sure that the data is being managed correctly, then you're able to do that too. So at a very high level, that's the Datrgy platform. It's very lightweight, very simple to deploy. What we're encouraging everyone to do that has an interest in getting in touch with us. We're more than happy to do deep dive demos, technical drill downs, those sorts of things, proof of concepts. For us, we've been using the platform ourselves for the last 7 or 8 months. We've beta tested to one customer with over 50 sites that they've rolled this to. So although this is our first release, we've been through various QA iterations beforehand, and actually the feedback's been extremely positive. We're also looking for customers to input. So it's a platform that's been driven by customer demand, and we want to continue that. So again, if there's areas that you feel maybe we could add to enhance the platform, one thing that is coming up that more and more is the ability for us to allocate costs to those storage numbers. So then not only can we optimize the storage, but also we can map that against cost profile and look to optimize based on cost. So again, that's coming further down the track. Something we've absolutely got on radar and on roadmap for that. So with that in mind, I'd just like to say thank you. Thanks for joining us.